EA extraordinaire. And I will get Victoria to please share the screen. Little bit of a PowerPoint thing, but not too much of a PowerPoint session to go with. But ladies, let me advise that you will also be able to ask questions. What I will ask you to do is pop your questions in the chat. And then Victoria will highlight those to me, and we will get to the end to be able to answer all of your questions. But firstly, we proudly present Achieving the C-Suite. So this is your chance to get some tangible ideas to help you navigate promotions and navigate your way to that executive level. So I would like to go to the next slide, please, Victoria. And I would like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people who are the traditional custodians of this land. I would also like to pay respect to the elders, both past and present, of the Kulin Nation and extend that respect to other Indigenous Australians present. Now, if you are not in the land of the Wurundjeri people, please do think of this as a sort of more of a response to anywhere where you might be. So thank you very much, Victoria. Would you go to the next slide? So I'm hoping that all of you understand what we do here at Women for STEM, but you may not know. And what I do find is that depending on your entry point into our organisation will determine what you think Women for STEM actually is. So if you came in as a mentee or a mentor as part of Mentor-She, you might think that that is what Women for STEM is. You may have come to a What's Hot in Tech event and you may think that that is what Women for STEM is. But I'm here to tell you that Women for STEM is so much more than all of that. We look at the intersection points of every woman and her career in science, technology, engineering, and maths. And we do that by offering a number of services or programs that you can see on screen. We focus on those girls that are grade 5 to year 12, and they come through our Go Girl, Go for IT event. And 2025 being our 20th anniversary, we are so excited because this year is a Go Girl year. We expect to see around 2,000 plus students coming to that event, and that will be in Deakin University. So if you are interested in being a volunteer at that event, please do keep that in mind. It is in September this year, as far as I'm aware, or August. I'll check that date. August. Thank you, Chris. Then we have our grad girls. So grad girls is where we, as I said, we look at intersection points. So what we do know is that when a young woman is starting to think about what she might do from her career, she has different points in her career that she will say, oh, do I want to stay in STEM or do I want to move on? We find these to be at the final year at at high school, year 12, is when a young woman is starting to think about, well, do I want to study STEM at the university level, that tertiary level? Then when she starts studying at that tertiary level, she'll walk into a lecture hall and she'll see that she's only one of 5 women among a sea of, say, 300 faces. And it is at this point that she says, do I really want to stay in STEM? And it's at this point that we then come back in. So not only are we working with these young women when they're going through their formative years in high school, we also look at these young women when they're at university in their penultimate or final year. And we're saying, yes, we know that it is challenging. Yes, we know that it is underrepresented, but Women for STEM is here. We are here every step of the way. Then when you get into the workforce, we have our What's Hot in Tech and our Importance of Women programs. Importance of Women, that you might not know, runs about 10 events every year. And we talk about all of those things that are important to women. The career issues that you may find, personal issues you may find, and we focus on those in Importance of Women. And it is a platform where women actually have a voice. Our What's Hot in Tech, we run 3 events usually every year, and that's really looking at those things that are at the forefront of technology. Our first event, which will be coming up very soon, is going to be focusing on AI. Again, everyone wants AI. And then our final program we run is Mentor-She. So for those women that are looking to accelerate their careers or get themselves to the executive or the C-suite level, Mentor-She is that space. This is how we attract, help women join, retain, and progress their careers in STEM. And we are there at every point of a woman's career journey. Thank you, Victoria. Next slide, please. Post this webinar, Victoria is actually taking a list of those individuals that are not a member at the moment with Women for STEM, and she'll be reaching out to you with a very special membership offer. What you get as a professional member in our organisation gives you the opportunity to take 50% off all of our public Women for STEM events. You get exclusive branding, we have merchandise, you get discounts on merchandise, you get public speaking opportunities, a LinkedIn membership badge, and so much more. So I do wish that those of you that are not members with us, please have a look at that membership offer when it comes through in the email after the webinar is finished. Thank you so much, Victoria. If you'd like to take that off, and I'm going to get started on our webinar. So I would like to, and I have the greatest of pleasures of working with these three amazing women, all at different areas within their career, but I really am so privileged to be able to work with each of them in different capacities within Women for STEM. So I would like to introduce our speakers. Firstly, I have Chris Skipper Conway. Chris is the chair of Women for STEM, and seeing and being part of DEI excites her because it is so highly aligned to her values: equality, integrity, inclusion, and empathy for others. Chris believes that businesses thrive when they fully understand that as a community, everyone has diverse needs. Individuals flourish in inclusive environments when they are valued, included, and have growth opportunities. Together, this creates magic, and Chris is there to make that magic happen. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you.
If everyone wants to do a round of applause, please feel free.
Thank you.
And Chris is also my boss, but I do believe in everything that she just said there. Absolutely. And now I'd like to introduce Louisa Nutt, or Lou. Lou started in her technology career as a software developer before covering other parts of the SDLC and eventually moving into executive management. So it is possible, ladies, to go from software dev all the way through to being an executive. This breadth of experience enables her to leverage an extensive history, which, coupled with her high EQ, gives her a unique edge. And absolutely it does, Lou. Absolutely. Lou is a board member for the Women for STEM and was the director of the Go Girl Go for IT program, which aims to get schoolgirls excited about a career in STEM. Thank you so much, and please welcome Lou. And finally, Aishwarya Kansaka, or Ash, in 2025 was Young Australian of the Year for Victoria. Ash is a globally renowned AI and automation engineer, entrepreneur, STEM education innovator, and non-profit executive. Ash is the co-founder of Synchroan. Is that correct, Ash? Thank you. An AI-powered platform for manufacturing companies. Concurrently, as Chief Operating Officer at Women for STEM, she leads 300 volunteers, impacting 70 schools and advancing 66,000 women's STEM careers. And that's just one of the things that we do at Women for STEM. In 2024, Ash pioneered a world-first STEM teaching model backed by $3.2 million in funding. Today, the model is nominated for the world's highest education prize, Global Yidin Prize, worth $15 million, and her STEM teaching curriculum impacts 2,700 educators and 40,000 girls across Australia. As the youngest SSIT member and advisor at the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineering, Ash is a powerful global leader shaping the future of AI governance. She actively influences global policymakers across Europe and APAC, driving forward ethical AI compliance regulations that will define the next era of responsible technology. Digital Innovation Futures Victoria has recognised her as one of Australia's top women in STEM, and she was awarded the Tech Diversity Education Award in 2024. In 2022, she became one of the youngest people ever to be inducted into the prestigious Victorian Honour Roll of Women, and in 2021, she won the Women in Digital National Award. Welcome, Aishwarya. As you can see, we have pulled together some preeminent speakers for this conversation. As I said before, please feel free to put any questions that you may have in the chat. But I am going to start us off because I think that these women will have some amazing stories to tell and from very different perspectives. So let me start the question. Now, this is through to our panel, and each panelist will actually have a response to this question. But we'll start off with you, Chris. So can you share the key milestones in your career that led you to the C-suite or the equivalent of? You're on mute.
I was being polite, so I'm so sorry. So polite, I forgot that I was on mute. So I just want to start with just saying to you that your career is a significant part of your life. You know, you spend about 40 years, and maybe for some of us more, in this working life cycle. And for me, what you need to do during that time is make sure no matter what you do, that it's aligned to one, your values, two, your passion, and unless without that, it becomes a chore. So my career has been shaped by a deep commitment to three things: people, change, and learning. And that learning comes from learning with others and learning more about myself. So I'm going to take you on a bit of a Chris Skipper Conway ladder. And that ladder started a long time ago, where I was really breaking the barriers in finance and accounting. But I was doing that in a country where women were disadvantaged, and there were definitely an underprivileged sector of the industry, and that was within South Africa. As an accountant, I was deemed the assistant accountant because a woman couldn't be the accountant, and I chose to run the trucking division of one of the largest motor companies, Mercedes-Benz. And there I worked with a Black community wanting to make sure they felt like they belonged, and also that their businesses absolutely excelled from a financial perspective, which impacted their lifestyle. But going on from that, I then transitioned from finance to tech within the banking industry. So I moved to Australia, and like a lot of you, that was a big upheaval for me. But I moved into Australia in banking, where I leveraged my financial experience to embrace technology, and was part of the team introducing, which shows my history now, ATMs within the banking space. I was also working in a very male-dominated area, which was in Canberra. And I was working in an area where I could not get a job into the highest employer, which was federal government, because I had come in as a South African. I later became an Australian, and I'm proudly Australian. And I became an Australian and joined the federal government, where I set up their very first bureau service. Now, the government told me, you can't do it. We don't deal in hard cash. And I said, each department within the government gets an appropriation. That is money. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that every technology system hums, so you get the best out of your investment into technology. They really thought their systems had failed, because the day I started, the system crashed. What I then lent on my background on looking at information and data, and found that it had crashed because their biggest system, a HR system, had gobbled up all the resources within the organization and caused the major failure. But I realized that while I was building this bureau, the thing that excited me was not only the technology and learning about it, but people. And I learned that having had set up that bureau service, what I was doing was going into businesses, saying to them, let's do the best through people. And so I moved into the recruitment and consulting industry. In Canberra, I set up the biggest recruitment company they had ever had. And the contracts that we won as a recruitment company actually went through and are still existing today. So very proud of the outcomes we achieved. But what it made me realize that the thing that excited me and allowed me to live with my passion was the ability to work in the technology industry. And as that happened, the organization I was working for said to me, we want you in the States. And I said, my family's not ready for this. They said to me, Chris, we really need you here, and we want you to go and run as the vice president for our consulting and recruitment division for the West Coast of the US. I have to tell you, I did leave my heart in San Francisco, and I did leave my daughter behind. She loved it as much as I did, and she's never come home. So I do still think of Australia as my home. But what it taught me was, take the opportunities. Don't look at them as barriers. Look at them as the next step in your career. I then went on to combine that recruitment to actually providing people with a software solution in recruitment. And I delivered the very first outsourcing recruitment solution for a company called Brown Foreman. And my young son turned around to me and said, oh, that's a really good place to be, Mum. Do you realize that they make alcohol? And I said, oh my God, no, Kagan. I didn't know that. I knew they had many products, but all I wanted to do was maximize their business opportunities. The hankering of Australia brought me home. But what it made me realize, to continue the technology, the recruitment, and never give up the opportunities. But I couldn't have done that passion of people without being part of Women for STEM. So take the chances, take the opportunities, and remember, every little barrier is an opportunity to do something new.
Fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much. What a great journey. I think we're going to hear some amazing things from these women. Louisa, Lou, take it away.
So sharing of key milestones that led me to the C-suite. For me, it was, I feel like I had a series of fortunate events in my life. And it wasn't, I don't describe it as luck in any way. I describe it as taking opportunities as they present themselves, and then making sure that you take the power to put yourself forward and exploit those opportunities. So as I said, I started as a software engineer, but even before that, I was sort of tapped on the shoulder by a manager that was very supportive and moved me into the IT service desk. Somewhere I'd never worked before, but I took to it really well. I've always been just someone who's quite interested in tech. I did some coding when I was younger, which isn't what kids did back then, but I found it really interesting. But it wasn't until I actually got into my working life. I came from an environment where we didn't have a lot of money, so I couldn't afford to go to university. And so I really wanted to put myself through university. So I took up a job that I thought would be able to help me save the money to do that. But incidentally, I actually, through the workforce, developed a career that had led me to where I am today without actually ever going back and doing the university degree, which I still have on my things to do list, but I just haven't actually quite got back to it yet, and I'm too busy. But yeah, so I ended up doing learning software engineering on the job, and the company that I worked for was exceptional at the RACV, and the RACV back then, and I think a lot of companies were like that, probably less so nowadays, really invested in higher learning for their employees. So I was a lucky beneficiary of that, I think. But I went for it. As soon as they put that forward, I was like, yes, I definitely want to do this. And so I went through the course, but the catch was that I had to do all of their IT support for their IT services. So I basically built a platform that enabled them to be able to track all of their IT tickets and calls and issues and resolution, which we now have very sophisticated software that does that. But back in those days, not so much. So yeah, so I built something in-house, which is great, and developed that passion for it, and then moved into other areas. From that, I found that actually, just being a naturally curious person, I found that I gravitated towards analysis. So I started off doing business analysis, and then eventually, actually quite quickly, moved into technical analysis, because I was really interested in what the technology was doing and why, and how things hung together, and could we do things better. And so the could we do things better led me to do software design and architecture. Moved into testing because I was really interested in making sure that we were deploying and in quality and doing the right things. And from that, found that I actually was really motivated to bring people on the journey with me. So moved into leadership. And so having had experience in lots of different components, the analysis, the architecture, the testing, and then project management, that really helped me to relate so well to every member of my team, because if they had a tech problem in coding, I could sit down and nut through the code with them. If we couldn't quite figure out how to get things to hang together, I could whiteboard a technical solution with them, writing test plans and strategies and all that sort of stuff, which I really love doing all of those things, and my team really loved that, having a leader that had that passion but also that interest. And I think that for me, that was part of the things that was part of the my attributes that really propelled me forward, was to not hide away and try and be someone who I'm not, and just be really true to who I am. And not everyone is like that, and that's absolutely okay. But the key message, I think, is to make sure that you understand and be true to yourself. You've got to know yourself, and then understand what your natural benefits are, what you're passionate about, because they're the things you do really well, and what are the things that you're not so good at, because they're the things you want to lean into. And so I'll talk a bit more about that as well. But yeah, learning about myself and leaning into that got me into the project management, then eventually into directorship. I started deploying international software releases, and I did quite a bit of travel through that. Now, this is what I meant by a series of fortunate events, that I could have very easily at that point said, no, I don't want to travel interstate or international because I don't like it, or I'm afraid to be by myself, because you are alone a lot of the time. And, it can be quite lonely. People think that traveling for work is glamorous, and I didn't find it glamorous at all. I found it far from glamorous. You're spending time in travel lounges by yourself, and half the time you're doing work as well, because you've still got to do the work. And then, you put up in a hotel, and, you're not generally with other people. Sometimes you'll be with the people that you're working with locally, but they've got their own friends and family to go back home to, and you don't, because you're there by yourself generally. So, but still, I really wanted to put myself forward and take the opportunities that I thought were going to really help me uplift myself and propel my career. So I said yes, and I swallowed it, and I did it. And that was hard for me, because I grew up in a family with 6 children, and I'm not used to being alone. be honest. It's just not, it's not my natural state. But it was good because I had to, you know, stretch my own, out of my own natural comfort zone. So I did that. That actually had a huge impact because it gave me the opportunity to learn how to network and also the value of networking. So getting to know more and more people across a diverse range of areas is effectively what networking is. And when I came back to Australia after living overseas for some time, that's when I joined the Women4STEM, eventually became on the board, and have moved into executive positions from there. But yeah, I mean, the milestones in my career really have been taking the opportunities as they presented themselves, even though I felt really uncomfortable doing it, well outside of my comfort zone. Half the time I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, but pushing yourself into that and forcing yourself to learn and not fail were the milestones for me.
Oh, beautiful. I just wrote a comment in here saying that I love how each of you have spoken so much about taking the opportunities when it's presented, taking that leap of faith. Ash, I want to hand over to you now for your story.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you. I just want to say before I start that it's so cool that I'm doing this with Chris and Lou because they're two women I've looked up to, and they're absolute boss women. You all have to see them speak in real life because the webinar doesn't do justice on how much passion they can showcase and share, right? So on that note, I think with my journey, it's been similar to both of them. It's about resilience and being adaptable. I grew up in Nepal where we were having a civil war when I was growing up. So obviously resources were very scarce, and everything was very self-motivated. You know, you had to push yourself to get an education. Oh, thank you, Lou. You had to push yourself to get this education. We didn't have computer or resources back then. So there was a small internet cafe where I started teaching myself computing. And there was a lot of tourists who would come in and out of the cafe. So I'd practice my English, I'd practice computer skills, you know, and everyone was very friendly and supportive. And going through school as well was quite difficult because of the political situation. But I ended up receiving a scholarship to move to Japan when I was 16. So I decided to take that opportunity and move to the country to do my undergraduate degree. Very young to do an undergraduate degree, but I just decided to go for it anyways. And then when I reached in Japan, I realized that, you know, I was told that everyone would speak English, it's going to be fine, but it wasn't the case. You know, I had to sort of learn the language and teach myself how to speak a different language from scratch. The university I went to was amazing. They had a really good teaching model, so really supportive teachers, really good friend circle. So that really helped me get through the time there. But honestly, it was a big struggle in the initial phases, you know. So I think my key milestone was that independent step I took, and just taking that leap of faith, or whatever you want to call it, just taking that opportunity when I had it. I think a lot of it has to come from within. You know, you can obviously seek out for support externally, but you need to sort of plan, strategize, and move forward and keep motivating yourself. I think that's very important. Once I moved to Japan, I started working when I was 17. So that was my first job. Technically, my first job was when I was 14. But you know, it's legal back there, but but so when I was in Japan, started working at 17, did an internship at a company where I did automation. So Japan obviously is very tech savvy. And I guess that's where I saw lots of machines for the first time in my life. And I fell in love with the systems and the machines that they were operating with. Then at 18, I moved to Tokyo to do another internship. And, you know, life was very tough. Like there was this one time where I was waking up at 4 a.m. and going to work because it was a 3-hour commute. You can't live in the city. It's too expensive in Tokyo. So I would commute 3 hours from the suburbs or the outskirts. And then by the time I was home, it was 11 midnight, almost close to midnight. And that was my life for about 4 months. So it was just on repeat, you know, and this is when I was so young. So I think very early on, it teaches you some really good skills of, you know, valuing opportunities, not giving up, and just supporting other people around you, and also being open to receive support from others. It's all about having that community around you and creating that impact. And that's when I decided to join Women4STEM. I saw this amazing organization doing so many amazing things for women in STEM. and mostly around giving women avenues to upskill as well, and network in the industry, which was so, so important. That's how I decided to join Women4STEM.
That's fantastic. I was about to make some notes around the key items from the three of you, which were the idea of that, and those of you that are on here and you're taking notes, opportunities when they present themselves. Lean into it, lean into the discomfort. I think, Lou, it's the fake it till you make it sort of thing. Just keep learning, keep being open to the opportunities that are presented to you. Every single woman here on this call, you know what this looks like, and you know that there are hard times and really tough times. How hard would it have been to be Chris leaving her daughter behind? Lou having to go overseas on her own and forge her way ahead in a completely different environment, and same for Ash. Really important. I'm really mindful of the time, ladies, and I think I would love to just jump through a couple of questions ahead, because I think we've talked about challenges here already, and I think we've sort of focused on the challenges of leaving loved ones behind, those sorts of things. So if we're okay, I'd love to open up the next question to the entire panel. And Lou, I'll start with you. And this is really where this is where some of the rubber hits the road. And I think we all have experienced this in the past. So Lou, I'd love to give this to you. I need to put sort of 3 minutes down for each speaker, but if you go a little bit over because what you're saying is so rich, please, let's just give the people on this webinar some really good stuff. So Lou, how did you overcome any gender biases or stereotypes in your industry or industries, because you've been in a couple?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's been tough initially. I don't find it so tough anymore, and I'll talk about that too. But I remember sitting in a room where I was literally the only woman in a room, and people would, men would be talking to the people in the meeting room, and then making eye contact with the others in the room, and then literally skipping over my seat as if my chair was vacant, as if I wasn't even there, like completely invisible. I'd actually resolved that I wasn't going to let somebody else's vision of me become my vision of me. And so I just didn't, I tried to, not let it get to me, which it didn't. And so I just pressed on and did a great job. And it was, there was always a turning point, always, where I would ask a, vaguely intelligent question, and then they turn around suddenly as if that chair's just like a popped out of nowhere. Like, oh, where did you come from? And so suddenly after that, it would get better. And so what I realized that, and I'm talking like 25 years ago. So I feel for me anyway, it is, those behaviors don't present themselves as often. But irrespective, I'm sure they do in many workplaces, and I'm sure there's people who are watching along today or on the recording later that will be able to relate to it. So for me, I just I had to make a decision that I was going to back myself, not let that person's vision of me infect my own vision of myself, and just stay true to myself. And I was always really focused on just doing a good job. So I thought, if I do a good job and I press through and I get the outcomes, and I'm not, put off by or intimidated by the perspective that one person or multiple people might have, then it will come through. And that did actually work for me. The other thing that, in terms of gender biases, was that when I was growing up, I was labelled as a tomboy, right? Because I didn't fit the female stereotype, because I would climb trees and play tiggy and, like have dirty jeans, and because I was, running around and playing games and stuff. And so I formed this image of myself that I was this thing that I didn't really even know what it meant, if I'm honest, that young. But then when I came into the workforce, it was the opposite. It was like I didn't fit in with the guys, and so I was something else. And so there was a bit of an identity reassessment at that point for me. But I realized again that it's stereotypes, and stereotypes are generalizations, and stereotypes are not any one person. They're generalized views of people. And so I had really good mentors along in my life, and I still do. And that has been a really important thing for me, to be able to get guidance from other people and encouragement to to just push through those stuff, because everyone eventually doubts themselves. Everybody has that. It's not a woman thing. Everybody does it. It is particularly strong in women, but everybody does it, right? And so having someone else there, humans are not designed to be able to navigate aversion or all of our stresses alone, right? We're social beings. And so we actually, when we're in a quite a stressed state, or difficult, like having difficulty navigating a scenario, we actually need to be able to co-regulate with other humans. And so having a person that or people, in my case, that I developed trusted relationships with was so important for me, because I had people to come and talk to. And so sometimes I'd just pick up a call, or I had a scheduled meeting with a mentor. And I had formal and informal mentors. So the informal mentors were people who were in my life, socially, or family members. Then they're the ones I pick up the phone to. But the formal mentors, within meetings were scheduled, we'd cover this stuff off. But yeah, I was always just really honest about how things that had happened and how I felt about them. And then I took people's advice on board, but I didn't necessarily execute on everyone's advice as prescribed. And I think that's another important thing, in life, that having multiple mentors, I think, is good, and it's important because it gives you diversity in opinion. But really, it's up to you to make a judgment as to what feels right for you and which approach you want to take. So so that was my approach in overcoming the stereotypes, was to push through them and effectively just do a good job. And then for me, that worked well.
Yes, it did. Look at where you're at now. That's
Yes.
fantastic. Yeah. I'm going to now. I love that. I'm making notes, because I'll regroup at the end of each of you saying something, because it's just great stuff that's coming out. So, Chris.
Okay, so I don't know whether it was a mistake or and I'm going to admit that one of the things that I really feel that I've always done is have that resilience, moving countries, moving jobs, taking action and strategic action. But one of the other things was looking at my role models, but also leading by example. So for me, that's what I based how I overcame gender bias. And I think the mistake I made in my early career was I thought that delivering undeniable results was the way to make the right path. And you can almost kill yourself at doing that. So I thought I really had to be honest with all of you and share what I learned was that, yes, I wanted to deliver results, but not at the extent that I wasn't open to learning. I wasn't open to getting advice, and I wasn't internalizing so much that I shut myself off from that advocacy that you can find with others. So what I learned was that within myself, I was able to deliver results, and I needed to be proud of those results, not working myself to the death, procrastination about the outcomes. And the other thing was that I learned to also really embrace my difference. I felt very different from the country that I was born within. And I felt that I couldn't fix the problem, but I didn't want to change me. And one of the best things I thought at the time was for me to go to an environment where I could deliver my dream, was valuing all people whether they were underprivileged cohorts or whether they were in the privileged sector. So accepting that that was me and that I shouldn't change because the government or you know, my parents thought differently, that I should conform. I needed to live my dream. But in doing that, like Lou talked about earlier, coming to a new country, I had to develop a supportive network. And I think for me, there have been times when I've thought, where am I going to build that network, and actively go and find like-minded people who believe and value the things that I love and actually work towards those. And I found my home within Women4STEM, because I found not only women, but men who believed in what I believed in. I also found people I could continue aspire to. The Ashes, the Lou's of this world, the Mary Beths of this world, the Danielles of this world, and learned that I could aspire to be a little bit like them, but not lose who I was. So there was also something that I learned, and my history made me feel that I possibly should have changed, was I was labeled as an outspoken South African, very direct. And what I thought was, what I needed to appreciate about myself was that assertive communication and self-advocacy wasn't a disadvantage. And for those of you that feel you shouldn't speak up because you might stand out from the crowd, let me tell you, if you don't have a voice, you will never be heard. But I did learn to change from the system within. And the system within taught me to value myself, to actually understand that even though I believe I am gender blind, that I have a lot to learn from various people. And it doesn't matter what gender you are, what culture you come from. Each of us has a golden nugget. And if you don't have a voice, you're denying people of that. So my message is, when you're focusing gender bias, just remain focused. Be prepared for who you are and the value you bring. And I think most of you know me, don't give up your determination.
Fantastic, Chris. I will sort of bring this all together at the end. Ash, to you.
Yep, I think as a woman of color, woman of minority, and being from culturally and linguistically diverse background myself, I've really struggled with the whole gender bias issue. In many ways, you know, being the only women in the room or the only female of color in a room, the burden of the first is what I call it. It's very heavy, you know, and I feel I'm going to be very vulnerable and honest. It feels like sometimes it's a very lonely journey. So it's very important to be a part of something like Women4STEM, I think, where you can have that network supporting you, people who understand what's happening. You know, because if you were to go to someone who's not going through these problems, a man, for example, they might not understand the seriousness of the matter or the impact on you. So it's really important to have that network. I also feel like the only way to get over gender bias is to prove your credibility through your work. If your work is very, very good, then it speaks for itself. I know that sometimes, even if your work is good, there will be some barriers because of these biases, but that's the most you can do, right? All you can do is control what your output is. And that's what I focus all my energy in. As a startup founder now in Victoria, you know, our startup ecosystem is worth about $130 billion. And if you look up the stats, I think only 4% of funding goes to a fully female-owned startup. And you're basically up against the stats, you're up against reality, you know, so it's very important to not give up in your journey. And if you look at other stats, like in my industry, so coming from automation, you know, only I think In tech, only 15% of STEM roles are held by women, but in something like automation, and then if you go into manufacturing or industrial processes, it's only 7%. So it's actually worse than the worst statistics, right? So you have to have some form of mental resilience to not let this affect you. And I think it comes from, lots of things. So you reach out for help, you get support, you get mentorship, upskill yourself, improve yourself constantly, not just in tech skills, but other skills like EQ, social development. I think that's very, very important.
Fantastic. So I've just made some notes, which I'm going to pop in here. What I loved is, and these are the notes that I've taken. And for those of you that want these tangible things, this is where the rubber hits the road for you. Stay true to yourself. Be authentic. Don't be afraid to find your voice. Every single woman here that's just spoken has said the same thing in different ways. Stereotypes are generalized views. So get a good mentor for guidance and encouragement. Be resilient. The journey can be lonely. Develop trusted relationships. Develop a supportive network. It's up to you to decide what feedback you will take. Take action and be strategic in the actions you take. Embrace your difference and control your outputs. I think they're quite fundamental. I'm going to put those into the chat. Please feel free if you would like to copy those. I would love to, on that, just because I am mindful of the time, and I know we may get some individuals who want some questions, but I really wanted to I'm going to jump us forward, and I know my panelists will be fine with that because they're all consummate professionals in this panel space. So I really wanted to be able to give the people on this webinar some tangible things that they can take away. Now, we talked about mentors, and I think I heard in their sponsors as well, and a lot of the questions we get asked, how do I get a mentor or a sponsor? So I'd love to ask the panel, and Ash, I'll just stay with you. Can you provide our audience with some tangible things they can take away when looking for mentors and sponsors?
I think it's all about research to begin with. Someone who is relevant in your field or the type of skills you want to get. That sort of mentorship is most beneficial, from my opinion, because they also have networks and connections in that field or related to the skills. So self-research is the first step. Get to know who you are seeking as a mentor is very, very important. Proactiveness, I think, is very important. No one's going to come to you and say, I want to mentor you. I think it's important where you request the mentorship. And there's ways to do it. Rather than you say, oh, it'll be great if you became my mentor. That's probably not the right approach. Maybe saying something like, I would love for you to be my mentor because X, Y, Z. Or I see this that you can add to my life, X, Y, Z. And this is what I can add to your life. So that sort of communication is very important. That proactive initiation is important. I think that's the best way to start the sourcing of a right mentor.
I like that, because it's that idea that a lot of people talk about the mentor-mentee relationship, and that is really about the mentor it's reciprocal. So you're going to give something and they're going to give something. So it's a give and take, and you have to have that. You can't just ask a mentor. You can't ask a mentor just to, hey, mentor me. It doesn't work. If you can actually give them reasons why you are seeking their tutelage, as it were, then I think that's really important. And I love that research, the mentors. Lou, your thoughts?
So first thing I'll say is I strongly encourage everyone, if you're not already, to be members of the mentorship program, and think about, consider joining as both mentor and mentee, actually. So, people, you don't realize how much you have to give, but giving to others is something that actually directly relates to life happiness. So I encourage you to do that, but certainly to find yourself a mentor. We have the mentorship program, which I really, really encourage everyone to participate in. If they've missed the intake this year, we'll have an intake next year, but diarise that. I have a slightly different view to Ash in selecting your mentor, but, you know, I just have unorthodox views about things sometimes, so I'll share. So from my perspective, I think having mentors who are in your industry is absolutely useful, because they can give you specific advice about how to tackle specific work-related problems. But in my experience, being able to progress my career has been less about how good I am at tackling work problems, which I have work colleagues to help me with, but more about how to tackle human problems. And, you know, that involves the organizational politics. Now, politics can be a dirty word, and I don't mean it with any negative connotation. I mean it in the sense that politics is just a description of the relationship between people. And, you know, there's things that people need to get done. They've got motivations, and they're set out to achieve a particular outcome, and that might be with the purest of intentions. And so having a mentor who can actually speak to you as a human and guide you through those experiences, for me, has been the most valuable thing. So I don't walk away from work going, oh my God, everyone's trying to screw me. This place is stuffed, I'm leaving. Which I can tell you, I've had many days where I felt like that. But being able to speak to a good mentor who helps me to see, well, actually, you know, from their perspective, they would be looking at achieving this outcome, and the thing that you're doing conflicts with that. So, you know, and then really helping me to actually find a common ground with the person that I've been trying to influence with, or the person that I might be having challenges with, or the person I'm trying to bring on the journey with me. I can't quite get them. So having a mentor that I can really connect with at a human level, and I respect them and their perspective, but they're different from me, that's been the key thing. So finding people that are diverse. And I've loved the mentors that I've been matched with in the mentorship program. Some of them actually career-wise have been more like either the same, or sometimes, you know, even a bit more junior, which I really value their input, because it's a totally different perspective. And so having that diversity of thought for me has been a really critical thing to help me navigate different perspectives. And as I said earlier, you don't have to take the feedback on, you don't have to take the advice, but it's good to hear it, because it's like, well, some people think that. I don't really want to take that approach, but it's interesting that you think that, because maybe other people think like that, and it's good to have that that perspective in your mind. Yeah, so that's been that's some guidance that I would give about selecting a mentor, is looking for some diversity using the mentorship program.
I love that. That mentorship program was my very first inroad into this organization, which is why I say at the very beginning, it feels like when I came in, I went, well, that must be what it is. It's mentorship. But then you kind of peel back and you think, oh, wow. And I love that. I love that idea of that diverse mentor. I think it depends. Would you agree, and before I go to you, Chris, would you agree, ladies, is that it is more about, it really does depend on where you're at in your career, at which points, as to the sort of mentors that I do find that I personally have a mentor who was my very first boss in a corporate environment. My very first boss. She is still one of my closest friends, and I will still ring her. She is 67 years old. She is not, and I will ring her going, oh my God, what would you do with this? And she's so good at just saying, okay, take a step back, breathe. All right, let's unpack it. Because sometimes you get into someone says something and it just triggers something in you, and it sends you on that tailspin. And a really good mentor, male, female, it doesn't matter, but a really good mentor is able to say to you, all right, now let's take a pause. Let's really look at this. Let's look at it from all these different angles, and then see what it looks like. And then sometimes you go away from it and you go, yeah, you know what? I'm feeling a bit sensitive today. And it's okay to feel sensitive. It's all right to feel sensitive, but you do want that person to sit back going, okay, well, now it's always the head and the heart, and you get a really good mentor that can help you unpick all of that. That's perfect. Thank you, Lou. Chris, your thoughts on this question?
So I agree very strongly with what you've said, all both Lou, Marybeth, and Ash. I really think, from my perspective, I've always found that somebody who can challenge your thinking is really what you need. So they're actually adding value to you as the person, and that person may be in your day-to-day life, but that will impact your career as well. I find that from a mentor compared to a sponsor, I found that sponsors often are the ones that will help you create the opportunities. And I think the mentor looks at the heart and the head, and I think that the sponsor looks at how we're going to project this further. So that's exactly how I see those two. But I've found that what you need to do is actually find somebody, while they challenge your thinking, of being kind to the beautiful self within each one of us, to give us the confidence and the resilience. And I think that what we need to do is, sometimes you need to look beyond one mentor. You need to have a couple. And sometimes that needs to be so that you are stretching yourself, perhaps from the sponsorship perspective. That's why I did this changes in careers, changes in country. But I also think, as Lou said, one of the biggest gifts you can give to yourself and give to others is mentor others as you yourself grow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Beautiful responses to that question. So the things that I've taken note on, and I'll pop these into the chat, and I will say, please put your questions in the chat if you would like to ask anything of the panelists. So I've written down, research the mentors who are working in the field you want to be in. Really important stuff. And I think sometimes that does help you if you're looking for a career change. Because sometimes it's like you might be working in one area and you want a career change, and it's like, oh, do I know anyone that has now moved into that space? Because it's a really good avenue for you to actually be able to then look at, well, do I really want to do that? What does that look like for me? Is it a good move? And you'll get some really good ideas from that. Be proactive in finding a mentor. Be prepared to create a reciprocal relationship, because that's what it is. And absolutely agree with Lou. Mentorship is a great place to start. It is the only program in Australia where you can get a C-suite mentor for $249. I mean, oh my God, like if I told you how much I spend on my mentors, it is so much more than that. But you could become a mentor and a mentee, so you get both sides of that in an amazing program. To reach the higher levels in your career, you need to be strong in people leadership. Finding a mentor who can help you with that, that's pretty vital. If you've been thinking about, yes, I'd like to move into the executive, or I'd like to move up into that next level of management, you've got to be a strong people leader. You've got to work on your EQ. The hardest job you will ever do is managing people. And for everyone here that manages people, will all be nodding furiously with me. And then find a mentor to help you see a different angle to a specific scenario. A diverse mentor will give you a different view, and they'll challenge your thinking. You want that. So I just made those notes based on our amazing panel, and I've popped those into the chat. Feel free, if you would like to, you can take those, steal them with pride. I have no issue with that. I am mindful it is 7:05. Isn't it amazing how quickly almost an hour and a half will go when you've got amazing speakers on board? I want to jump us almost to the end, because there is the final question that I had for each of my panelists, and I really want them to provide the people on this webinar with some really meaty advice here. And I know that each of them will come at this question with a very interesting response. So I will start with, now who haven't I started with? Ash, have I started with you? I have. I think Chris, I haven't. Have I? Anyway, all right. We're gonna start. Ash, I'm gonna start with you because you're my first name on my list, and you're the first person on the call on the screen. What advice would you give to aspiring female leaders aiming for executive positions? Now, Ash, you come from that innovative founder perspective, so you're what you're going to speak about is going to be very different to what Lou and Chris will give, but I think just as valuable for those on this call, especially. So what advice would you give to aspiring female leaders aiming for executive positions, especially in overcoming obstacles?
I think the first advice is believe that you can overcome the obstacle. And that's how you start, right? I think for me, from my perspective, being the youngest executive in the history of this organization, and usually youngest, not anymore, but I'm getting older, but but usually generally youngest in the room as well. Ageism is a huge thing. You have to understand that maybe you are younger, but maybe your experiences are diverse enough to make you qualified to be in that room to begin with. For example, I started working when I was a teenager. So if you look into that, maybe not everyone has started working when they were a teenager. And I've lived in 4 different countries before moving to Australia. So there's a lot of variety of things that you can bring to the table that not necessarily are your age, or not necessarily are experiences through your age. That being said, obviously having more experience is always better, right? So it's a thing that you need to realize, that you need to look beyond your age and look beyond the obstacle. I think strategizing is very important. It can be very overwhelming when you look at a problem all at once. And this is something I'm still working on as well. And I'm going to be very vulnerable and very honest. Sometimes I look at challenges and it's extremely, extremely overwhelming. And what's helped me is to break it down into smaller things and take it one day at a time, because you can't really carry the whole burden all at once. So it's a lot about self checking, self motivating, and just realizing that you don't have to solve everything in one day. And you could spend some time to get to a level or a job or any sort of role you want to play. Um, I encourage more young people to apply for executive roles. I think there's a huge need of diverse opinions. Many roles you might not make because of your age, but many roles you might make because of the diversity you bring of thought, and of innovation and creativity. So you just have to find the right place that values this and align to that. So yeah, don't think that you're too young or you're too old. Just go for it.
I love that. I love that. Ageism is a funny thing, isn't it? I'm going to be really honest with everyone here. I remember looking at resumes when I was a leader, and a number of years back now. And I do recall looking at resumes going, whoa, they've only had 5 years experience. And now it's like if someone's got 3 years experience, it's like an amazing thing. But what I do think is age, what I find interesting, especially in tech, is there is ageism, and it is at the top end, because I guess I'm at that top end. There's only so much hair dye we can use, ladies. I'm just letting you know, and I'm using it all. However, I think the idea is that we all have something to contribute, right? And that is the first step. You all have something to contribute. So regardless whether you are younger coming in or older, there is some great stuff in there. But yeah, I think the age shouldn't be seen as a detractor at either end of that spectrum, right? At either end of that. But you are right, Ash. And unfortunately, being young and being a CEO so young and being female, all of those intersection points are really, it creates obstacles that not everybody has to face. But a young man will face that, a young woman will still face that. So I think that's really important. I'd love to go over to you, Lou. Would you like to add your
Yeah,
2
sure.
cents worth to this?
So I think it's different if you're going for an executive position as a promotion in your own company, or if you're going for an executive position as a promotion in a company that you don't work for currently. So I'll talk to both. If you're interested in a promotion, then my view is that you need to make sure that you, and I always say, just, as a foundation, make sure you do a good job. And so that doesn't mean doing everything, right? What it does mean is asking for help, making sure that you've got the right team around you so that you can succeed, being really transparent about the things that you are going to get done and about the things that it's not humanly possible to do. No one wins, and people don't progress into executive positions by working 20-hour days, right? And you're not your best self when you're working like that either. So being really clear about when you need help, exactly what help do you need? I need another 5 people in this team. I need to outsource this piece of work. We don't have this domain knowledge, so I need to bring an expert in. You need to be really clear about what is it that is needed so that you collectively and you personally can succeed. So do a good job. And that's what I mean by when I say do a good job. Bringing others on the journey. So being transparent, being a very good reporter. So making sure that you are promoting the good things that you're doing. Don't win in silence. That's not where the good stuff happens, right? And I'm not talking about blowing your own trumpet, because I know that that works for some people, and for those people who it does work for, go for it. But actually, it's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about making sure that when you do have the wins and you have succeeded in something, that you've got the metrics to back it. So have the data. This is what we're aiming to achieve. We're expecting to achieve it by this time. We hit the budget. We hit it on time. We exceeded, it was early. It was over budget, but we introduced this value, whatever, right? But just be really, really good at telling that story and bringing people on the journey with you, because people will get promoted internally when even the work that they've been focusing on hasn't been smooth sailing, right? In fact, you often are rewarded for facing into the challenges and then getting the right outcome, and showing that you can navigate and lead a team through those challenges is the most fundamental thing. So be a good reporter, have good data points along the way, and make sure that people know about the challenges that you're facing into and what you're doing about them. The next challenge and what you're doing about it. And that way, retrospectively, you can say, hey, these are all the challenges that we experienced, and this was the outcome that we got. So be really clear on that. And I can't emphasize enough having those data points. It's really, really important. So, metrics that matter. And taking accountability. So in my view and in my experience, getting a promotion isn't, the people who are Teflon and who always have someone else to blame for things going wrong and who take all the celebrations for themselves, they're not usually the ones that get promoted into an executive position. So if you want to develop and progress into that position, you need to take accountability, you need to own it, and you need to do a great job, and you need to celebrate it and be transparent about that. If you're looking to have a promotion externally, that is really difficult because the company that you're going to doesn't know you. So my advice in that instance is be a good networker, right? The Women4STEM run lots of networking events. We've got the Importance of Women event. We've got the What's Hot in Tech event, all opportunities to meet people who work elsewhere or volunteering for an organisation, for any organisation, but like the Women4STEM, it doesn't have to be us, gives you the opportunity to work with other people outside of your company, right? Now, that's been really important. I've actually gotten jobs because I've worked with people in my volunteer capacity at Women4STEM, and they know me. And I've done a good job in that space. So when I've gone for a job in that role in their company, which happens to have been a promotion, they've advocated for me. They've been a sponsor. Like, actually, I've worked with her. Yes, it's a yes from me. I really think you should hire her. I haven't asked them to do that. I didn't even know they did that until afterwards. But be a good networker. So that's my advice if you are looking to move into an executive position in a company that you don't currently work for, because these people don't know you. So you need to be able to work with people that you do know.
I love that. I love that. One of the things that I say to people when I'm speaking to them about volunteering for this organization is that it's not just about, you get to your time to shine. You can get up on stage and you can do those sorts of things, but it is the networking. And you think about it, Go Girl, as an example, we talked about Go Girl at the very beginning of this call, and for those of you who don't realize it, that is a 300, is it like 300 strong volunteers will show up on the day volunteers. They have a huge cohort of on the day volunteers. They are anybody you could possibly think of, executives, decision makers, etc., that will take that day and they will come and they will volunteer at Go Girl. What a great opportunity for a networking moment. And then with the importance of women, and that runs 10 events throughout the year. Women for STEM will run events throughout the year. Every single person that's on this call now, if you are not sending out LinkedIn connection requests to all of these people that you're seeing on this call, then that's a missed opportunity. And I think that's what you're saying there, Lou, is that external roles, they're really hard to get.
Yeah.
It took me 50 interviews myself to get my first CIO role, right? 50, right? Very, very and how did I get it in the end? Through my network. Through my network. And that's the strength of the network. And so, Lou, you are absolutely right that internal branding is important. But you were going to say?
Yeah, I was just going to share something. So when you go to a networking event, make sure that people that you meet, you connect with them on LinkedIn straight away. But I want to show you, and I probably won't be able to do it on the thing, but I'll just point it out. So when you go into the search tab on your phone, once you click on the search tab, there's a little QR code in the bottom, in the right corner. And when you hit that, you get a QR code to your own LinkedIn profile. And so whenever I meet someone at a networking event, if I think they're interesting, or I think there'll be a good opportunity for us to network in the future, then I get this up and I show them and I say, hey, let's connect. And it's not awkward because all they have to do is scan it rather than asking me, how do you spell your name? And, oh, is that you there? They just scan it, it comes up straight away, they hit connect, and then it's done. And we can go on with conversing rather than having that awkward interruption to the conversation because I'm trying to get them to connect with me. So that's a really good tip.
And you know something else, Lou, just on saying that. So ladies, this is really important. Whenever I go to a networking event, I'm speaking to potential decision makers for, certainly for what it is that I'm doing now, those people I want to know because they'll help maybe fund or be part of Women for STEM. I actually show them that straight away and they go, oh, how do you do that now? And I say, well, do you mind if I touch your screen? I'll show you. And then what I've actually done inadvertently is I'm being very kind and showing them how to do that, as Lou has just shown you. But what it also shows the person you're speaking to is, here's a problem solver. Here's somebody that's just solved a simple problem for me and wasn't that simple. Now, you all might think, oh, it's not as easy as that, Mary Beth. It is as easy as that because I can have a conversation with somebody after that saying, oh, remember how I showed you that QR code? Oh, that was fantastic. Yeah, that was great. I use it all the time. Would you like to have a conversation? Blah, 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 blah. And it leads on to something. Rules of reciprocity. If you don't understand what rules of reciprocity are, learn about those. Now, up to you, Chris. What are your thoughts on this final question?
So I think from resilience is key, and really understanding that setbacks don't define you. They actually get you to promote yourself to a new level and understand what you can change, what you need to change, and how to go about it. So the other thing I also think is that we all really need to be prepared to embrace challenges and take strategic risks. I'm not talking about taking risks that won't project your career or project, or put you at risk against organizations that don't have the same values as you. But I think we all, as women, and I'm going to be really honest, I think that women tend to take less risks than men. And factually, there is the data around that. So what we've got to realize is if we want to be who we think we can be, let's take the risk to go and test it. But the other thing is that from my perspective, I also think that many of us don't speak up. And really, unlike each one of you on the session tonight, you really have to take a seat at the table. Because hiding behind who you are at work and what you do and not having a voice will never get people to see the true value of you. I like what Lou was saying about when you're looking for a role, either within your organization or out of your organization, but having worked in the recruitment space for many, many years, I think one of the undervalued things we each do to ourselves is we don't understand that when we are going for a promotion or going to a new role, we bring far more than the job description defines. So be prepared. Understand what's in the job description and how you meet that. But also, more importantly, understand that secret value that the new role will give to the employer, or the change in having you on their team will give to them. You each have an amazing value, but we actually don't articulate it particularly well.
Wow. I've made so many notes. I will put my notes into this chat as well. Lou, fantastic. Thank you so much. With my panelists, please feel free to pop your LinkedIn details in the chat for anyone that's on this call. The notes that I've taken, this is really important. And what I really wanted and had hoped for this webinar is that anyone that's joined it, anyone that watches this later, will get really tangible things to take away and use and find them quite useful. And I found some of this stuff really useful, in fact, myself. The notes that I just took about the obstacles and how we're going to actually push through to that C-suite or that executive level, or whatever it is whatever your North Star is, because that's really what we're saying, because it's your career. So your North Star is going to be different to somebody else's. But what we've got is, first and foremost, believe that you can overcome the obstacle. Love that. Age isn't a detractor. You will always be able to bring something to the table. When feeling overwhelmed, break down the issue into smaller chunks. I mean, it's that old adage, how do I eat a chocolate elephant? Well, I mean, I would try and eat all of that thing in one go and be feeling really sick. However, if you break it down, you can eat it all really, over the course of a couple of weeks. The internal promotion, I love that internal versus external piece. So the internal promotion that Lou talked about means doing a good job, which is asking for help, what that looks like. Have a strong team around you. Be clear so that you and your team succeed. Bring others on the journey. Be sure to highlight the wins and have the data to back up that outcome. Be a strong reporter, communicator. Yes, challenges you are facing and what you're doing about them. So talk about those challenges you're facing and be really, yes, it's a challenge, but this is what I'm going to do to solve it. A lot of leaders, look, I'm a leader, and if an employee of mine comes to me and says, "Oh, I've got all these problems," my expectation is you're going to say, "Yes, I've got these problems, but this is how I intend on resolving those." Do you think that's the best course of action, Mary Beth? Because honestly, we're leaders. We don't have all the answers. We're not the oracles of all seeing, all knowing. We surround ourselves with really strong people because that's what we do as leaders, and that's what leaders do. So it is talking about the challenges you're facing and what you're doing about them. That's very important. And it isn't self-promotion, okay? Understand that, okay? You're not going out there, talking about how wonderful and brilliant you are. You're actually saying, hey, I've got a solution to this problem. Have metrics that matter. I loved that, Lou. Loved that so much. Data is really, really important. Yep. Data in your resume, data as a data point in your LinkedIn profile. Go in and have a look at those really strong LinkedIn profiles of some of your senior leaders, and you'll see that they'll have data points all over it. Very, very important, yeah? Because it actually shows your organization not only what you know, but what your team knows as well, and what you're going to do to resolve problems, how you're going to deliver into them. It shows the value you bring as well as your team and you as a leader brings. So I can't stress that enough. Take accountability and own that. So many times you'll see somebody that doesn't take accountability, and it's really frustrating. But also, as you are leaping ahead in your career and you're watching that person still behind, you'll understand why it's so important to do it. I made some final notes for the external role. Love this. Be a good networker. Absolutely. Volunteer for organizations that get you in front of potential hiring leaders. You want to be in front of hiring leaders? Women for STEM is a great organization. If you want to really be in front of people that are making decisions, we have the industries that we interface with are lengthy, and the breadth of those industries is also very deep. This is one of the reasons why Women for STEM gets asked by the Victorian government to actually get involved to implement things for them, because they know that we have the reach. So that's a very important one. Understand the rules of reciprocity. I'm going to leave that one with you. You can all look that up. Setbacks don't define you. They help you with resilience. Don't be afraid to take risks. This is about opportunities. You see how they all looped back together? Hope you did. And understand your secret value. I even would throw into that transferable skills, but I'm not going to add that to my note because you'll all hear me tippy tapping away. And I'm going to put those in for everybody. Please feel free to take a copy of those before we leave this call. We have 3 minutes left, and I don't see any comments coming through from any questions for our panel. But if anyone wants to make a comment, you've got 3 minutes before I close this out and thank our panel very much.
I'd like to make a comment, Mary Beth, because I think that what we've got is not only those in the C-suite on this call, but those budding to get to the C-suite. So what I'd say is make this the start of your community if you're not already part of Women for STEM, because everyone on this call wants to succeed. And I believe at the heart of everyone on this call, they want you to succeed too. So let's make this our little community of C-suiters.
Now, we do have one question, which is how important is doing an MBA? Who would like to pick that up? We've got about 2 minutes. Anyone feel confident to give a very short answer? Lou, I think you would be probably perfect in that space.
I think that it's important. What is important is to understand how an organization works, right? That is important. Doing an MBA is a way of achieving that. And so if that's your preferred way of learning, then yes, you should. But having it on your CV, will it actually, get you straight through to an executive role? Absolutely not. People don't hire executives based on their CVs alone. They'll base them, usually it is actually based on networking and who you've worked with. I get phone calls all the time from other executives that I know saying, hey, you're connected with this person. What do you know about them? So people will be doing checks on you that you don't even know they're doing checks on you for. So if you're doing it to get yourself an executive role, I think the answer is it's not important, but having the knowledge is important. So consider that. And
there was a follow-up there, Lou, which was, when you have a Bachelor of Business is an MBA, when you have a bachelor's, is that something, or do you still stand by the same response?
Yeah, I think it depends on where you are in your career. Okay. So when you're earlier in your career, let's say first 10 years, having these sorts of credentials are important, but also they give you an opportunity to network with people that you've gone to university with and they go and work elsewhere, right? So that is actually very valuable. But as you progress further in your career, at my age, and after my tenure, people aren't looking at what I did 25, 30 years ago at university. They're just not. So yeah, it depends on where you are in your career.
Yep, absolutely agree. Ladies, I'm going to close this out. It is 7:30. Man, that went crazy. That was great. And I loved the responses. Absolutely love them. Please link with our panelist. I would like to thank Chris Skipper Conway, Board Chair of Women for STEM, my boss, and just an absolutely gorgeous human being. Louisa Nutt, also on the board. We were on a board meeting this morning, so Lou and I have been seeing each other quite a lot today. but also, you know, I work with the most amazing humans on the planet, and I am so blessed to work with this amazing organization. And Ashwarya Kansaka, who is my Chief Operating Officer within Women for STEM, also an amazing woman. Thank you for joining me on this panel. I can't thank you enough. For those of you that are not members, you will receive an email from us. I'm going to close us out. This recording will be made available to all of the attendees if you wanted to pick up anything and you weren't able to catch some of the notes on here. Have a fabulous evening, ladies. Take care, and we will see you at the next either Move the Needle series or at one of the amazing events that we have. Importance of Women is Wednesday night. If you do not have your tickets, you can still get them. I will be there. It's going to be amazing, and it is in the city from 5:30 onwards. So hopefully we will see you at Importance of Women coming up. Thank you all. Have a great night.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.